Will you drink to the earth and to the days which have passed upon it? Will you drink to the fullness which was and to friends who have passed on? Will you drink to good company well met?
All right, let's. There we go.
Here we go.
All right, so we have bingo cards.
I'm gonna hand people pens.
And we're gonna be checking off because is what we did last time. And actually, Lauren's the only one drinking.
Unbelievable. I love inappropriate contact on here.
Yes.
I have Soul of the Nation.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I think that's like the name of the speech.
It is, yeah.
It is.
It is.
Do I get that one already?
I think so, yeah.
That counts.
But he's repeating that. He did that the first time around.
Oh, here he goes. Here he comes. You ready?
I'm scared.
My fellow Americans.
Oh no, he already can't talk.
Please,
Oh, coughing.
have a seat.
Wait, is coughing on here?
Was that Max?
Should be.
I speak to you tonight from sacred ground in America. Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Well, now to the Biden presidency. President Biden took aim at what he calls a threat to American democracy during a fiery primetime speech in Philadelphia. He singled out former President Trump and his supporters, saying they threaten the foundation of our republic.
MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence.
President Biden said efforts are underway across the country to undermine future elections at the state level. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy delivered a preemptive rebuttal from Mr. Biden's hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Joe Biden is right. Democracy is on the ballot in November. And Joe Biden and the radical left in Washington are dismantling Americans' democracy before our very eyes.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Cross Connection. I'm Tiffany Cross, and boy, do we have a lot to discuss this morning, so let's get right into it. You guys saw the primetime speech Thursday night where President Biden warned that American democracy is on the brink, and he did not shy away from pointing out that Donald Trump and his followers are the ones pushing it over the edge.
MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. The Second Amendment's not absolute. If I win, I'm coming for it. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now, as I speak, in state after state, to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself.
A threat that clearly seems to be growing every single day. Let's bring in our guest. Very excited to have this panel break down President Biden's speech. Latasha, I want to kick it off with you. What do you say? Did Biden capture the soul of America on Thursday night?
You know, I think he did three things. One, I actually thought it was one of his strongest speeches. I think that he was able to capture this idea of hope. You know, the last 2 years has been very difficult for people. So even having a sense of hope, I think that in itself, I think he did a really good job at. The second thing I think he did is he called out some things that some of us have been screaming all the while. And the fact that he actually mentioned white supremacy, the fact that he actually mentioned that there's this element around, there's an attack on equality and democracy, and both of those are connected. I thought those were two big, really good points that he made. You know, the third thing is that we also have to be honest that in the context of while the MAGA Republicans are certainly leading the effort, that there's also, the Republicans have been complicit, that there has been a strategy and a policy to exclude people in this nation, and the Republicans have been complicit, but also there have been some Democrats that have been complicit.
Well, I guess, Brian, I'd make 3 points. Number one, after listening to the president's speech, I really understand why it's an unassailable fact that age does not guarantee wisdom. Number two, we saw the President Biden we saw last night was really every inch Joe Biden, the politician. His speech was a very cynical attempt to fill our heads with stupid. And number three, I thought to myself, what a missed opportunity to talk to the American people straight up about the the reasons when they lie down and sleep at night they can't. He could have talked about crime, inflation, learning loss by our children, the mountains of fentanyl coming across the border, killing our teenagers. Instead, he chose to say to the American people, if you don't agree with me about higher taxes, more government, if you don't agree with me that moms are birthing people, if you don't agree with me that government has a constitutional right to talk to your 5-year-old about sexuality, you're a bad person and you're not even an American. And it was, I guess after it was over, I said to myself, you know, it's really true. I've said this before, but the water's not going to clear up in Washington until we get the pigs out of the creek. And no one is coming to save us but ourselves.
Because obviously Republicans, I think, are the biggest threat to democracy. We don't separate right-wing extremists and Republican Party anymore. I was struck, though, just now you said there are some Democrats complicit in this. Can you just explain to our viewers what exactly you mean by that?
Well, let's talk about Senator Manchin and Sinema. There are two senators who have been standing in the way of us being able to actually pass legislation to end the filibuster so we can get progressive legislation passed. Also have to put pressure to say that no one can actually stand in the way of our democracy, including members of our own party.
We are joined exclusively by the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Governor, thank you for being here. Overnight polling must have been really bad for Biden's big fascism speech, given the whiplash he gave everybody today. What was your initial reaction when you first heard what he said?
Well, I thought it was one of the most disgusting speeches an American president has ever given. He ran as being a unifier, and he's basically saying to the vast majority of the country that disapproves of him that they're effectively a threat to the republic. He dodders, he lashes out, but at the end of the day, his policies are why there's so much opposition to him. He came in and he opened the border, and we've seen what a disaster that's been. He kneecapped American energy. We've seen how that's hurt millions and millions of people across our country. They've inflated the currency. We have one of the worst inflations we've had in over 40 years. So, of course, people are going to be upset at all the wreckage that he's left in his wake. He is the American Nero. He's a failed leader, and I think that he is doing this because he's trying to energize his base to fend off a real butt whipping this November.
The unemployment rate also ticked up to 3.7% last month. The Biden administration says that's a sign that more Americans are entering the labor market and looking for work. The jobs numbers come as more reaction pours in following the president's primetime speech, where he warned democracy is under attack. Christina Ruffini is at the White House with the latest. Christina, good morning.
Good morning. President Biden did address those economic numbers at the top of an event yesterday. He said they are proof that the great American jobs machine continues its comeback. But at the end of the event, the questions reporters shouted were about that speech he gave in Philadelphia. Let's take a listen to his response.
I don't consider any Trump supporter to be a threat to the country.
At an event touting the impact of funds from the American Rescue Plan, President Biden was asked to clarify his position following a fiery speech in Philadelphia.
Anyone who calls for the use of violence. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country.
I'm very disappointed that the president would call people who don't agree with him those kind of names.
Republicans criticized the speech for being political and divisive. Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina tweeted that was a campaign speech under the guise of a presidential address.
This was not a political speech.
The White House Friday defended the remarks as well as the use of active duty members of the U.S. military.
And it was about our values as a country, about our democracy. And he believes the men and women who wear the uniform and protect us every day, protect this country every day, that's what they fight for as well.
And from democracy to the economy, the Biden administration also celebrated the release of the latest jobs report.
We're not in a recession period.
The U.S. economy added 315,000 jobs in August. But inflation, although slightly improved, is still at 8.5%.
Governor, to what do you attribute the flip-flopping here? Is this senility or is this self-preservation because he saw the polling on this speech and the reaction?
Look, it's been said that the president of the United States is whoever is feeding his teleprompter. And so they fed that teleprompter in Philadelphia last night, and he angrily delivered that speech and lashed out at his fellow countrymen. Today, he was asked off the cuff, and he said something totally opposite. But I'd note, Raymond, they're tweeting from his account the same nasty stuff that he said last night. And so I think the people that are in control of the White House want to drive this message that people that dissent from his policies are somehow second-class citizens. And think about it. They've been willing to mobilize the administrative apparatus of government to go after people they don't like. Remember, this time last year, they were imposing vax mandates. They wanted people to lose their job based on getting an mRNA shot or not. And unfortunately, I think the weaponization of this government is something, when you talk about 87,000 IRS agents, who's that going to go after? It's going to go after the people that he was attacking in his speech last night.
Governor, here's what Biden said about acceptable Republicans. Watch this.
Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. American democracy only works if we choose to respect the rule of law and the institutions that were set up in this chamber behind me. Only if we respect our legitimate political differences.
Governor, who made Biden the passport officer of mainstream Republicanism? And does the governor of Florida fit in that definition, do you think?
Well, look, he talks about rule of law. What has he done? He's violated his oath of office to take care that the laws are faithfully executed by opening the border. He's not following the law there. Look what he did with the student loan bailout. Congress never authorized that. He's citing a law from September 11th to somehow give loan forgiveness and put it on the backs of the taxpayer for people with degrees in gender studies. So spare me this idea of the rule of law. He doesn't give a darn about the rule of law. And yes, the only Republicans he likes are Republicans that want him to get his way. If you stand up against his bad policies like we do in Florida, then of course he's going to try to write you out over who's acceptable as an American citizen.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Kevin McCarthy becomes Speaker, is he an acceptable Republican or not? Is he not going to speak to the Speaker of the House? I rather doubt it. Governor, last night we saw two Marines standing at attention behind Biden. At least one veterans group says they're reduced to props. Here's how the White House press secretary defended it.
The presence of the Marines at the speech was intended to demonstrate the deep and abiding respect the president has for these service members, to these ideals and the unique role our independent military plays in defending our democracy.
Governor, you're a veteran. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, he's using those Marines as a prop for a partisan attack on half the country. I think that that's something that doesn't sit well with a lot of veterans. And I'd also say he respects veterans. He respects active duty. He has kicked out military members based on the COVID jab. So that's not respect in my book. We've lost a lot of good people who wanted to serve, but for his mandates.
Yeah, well, some are saying it was also a way to underscore his war talk, if you will. And they keep saying this is not a political speech, but sure it sounded like it. And the imagery was quite aggressive, like the Praetorian Guard surrounding him there.
Yeah, look, and then I think you look at the way he's weaponized federal agencies. It all plays into this idea of him mobilizing government against people he doesn't like. And he has done that time and time again. And I think he's going to continue to do it. And if Republicans do take control, they need to hold them accountable, because I think it's likely to get worse if he loses in the midterms.
What's your take on the behavior of the FBI and the DOJ in this Trump raid?
Well, I agree with Ranking Member Turner in that there just has not been enough transparency for something of this magnitude, something this unprecedented. You would expect the FBI and the DOJ to go to great lengths to ensure they are conducting themselves with the highest level of professionalism, but they never notified our committee, which you would expect them to do if indeed there was a danger posed by the classified material that was in Donald Trump's possession.
I mean, democracy is messy, but it's better than all the other forms of government. I think that if this was a speech to unify the American people, it had just the opposite effect. It basically condemned all Republicans who supported Donald Trump in the last election. That's over 70 million people. And, saying that Republicans are a threat to democracy is really a slap in the face.